There's nothing a retired governor can do about the Soviets, but a president, now he can do a thing or two.
I enjoyed this portrayal of a love, and I thought that it was a great message in itself, the two characters, Nancy and Reagan. So could you talk about their kind of relationship? And
I think at the heart of this movie, it's a love story, actually. It's kind of the story that we kind of felt, but we never really got to know in the film, because it follows their whole relationship from the time that they met. And certainly, I mean, overall, the movie goes, Reagan from 5 years old to when he said goodbye to the American people, when he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's at the age. But Nancy was such a huge part of that story. I don't think you can tell Ron's story without Nancy. It was the central relationship of his life.
I think that they were such a unit, and people always saw, like we are right now, if he was being interviewed, Nancy was sitting by his side. And I think people were fascinated by their relationship, but I don't think they knew a lot about it. And that's what's, I think, cool about our film, is that you actually see how that relationship came about, how they met, how their love story evolved, how fierce and fiercely protective Nancy was of Ronald, and how much she believed in him and lifted him and supported him and helped him find his purpose in life. And it's really cool, I think. And thank you for noticing that and appreciating it too. It's the heart of the film, really.
I love that. The other thing that I really took away from it is that Reagan was talking to different political parties. He's talking to different people. And I feel like today, we get so much like this, like, no, you can't talk to a different political party than you or whatever. We're so divided. What would you like to say about that? How did doing this movie kind of encourage you in that way?
Well, Reagan, he was good friends with Tip O'Neill, who was Speaker of the House.
Democrat.
They'd fight. It was, Democrat. And, they said, well, we're going to be enemies during the day, but after 6 o'clock, we're a couple Irishmen having a beard. And, he said, just because he disagrees with me 30% of the time, that doesn't make him a 30% enemy. It makes him a 70% friend.
Yeah.
And you get that dialogue going, and that's what we need to get going.
We need to get back to that. And, Reagan was a Democrat for half of his life, too. So I just think the fact that we can't have an open dialogue and we can't respect each other's differences and be able to talk to each other is a shame. And those Reagan years were an example, because I knew as a young girl, we'd go to these parties and the Reagans were there as well. And my parents were very liberal Democrats. So I just loved being able to grow up in a time where there wasn't so much hate, or if you don't agree with me, you can't talk to me, or I don't want to talk to you. So.
Are there elements of the movie, maybe that, or other elements that you would help encourage people, maybe about this coming election, or just in general, the messages in the movie?
I think it's not a classroom situation. Go see a documentary for that. It really, I get the movies to feel things. And this is a great reminder of this movie to people who lived it, about what this country used to be and how great it still can be for those who were too young to know. And it reminds us we're all Americans. This is our story too.
Yeah, it's our story. And I think we want people to be entertained. I think I see people moved at the end of the movie. It's a relationship story too, which is also a beautiful thing. So I think it has a little bit of everything in it. And hopefully people will just enjoy seeing a story and learning about these two people who became incredibly iconic and important in our history too.
Well, I really, I appreciated Reagan. We saw they drove his casket down we live in Camarillo, up to the Reagan Library, and my brothers stayed there all night to see his, touch his casket. So I appreciate that you guys did this movie. Is there something you'd want to say specifically to the Movie Guide audience? Because Dennis, I know we've supported a lot of your work. Is there something you'd want to say specifically about this?
I'd say to the Movie Guide audience, really all generations, but I want to talk especially to the baby boomers. That's me as well. We're always complaining about there's nothing made for us. Go see this movie, get out of the house, go to the movies again. You know what I mean? The 80s were such a great time for movies. And this one lives there. So come on out.
I love it. And for younger, Gen Z needs to know the story, right?
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's all
Bring
good.
them all, the whole family.
I'm curious, Ron. What would you say is the issue of our time?
No question about it. Communism and the Soviet Union.
People really love Reagan. What was one of the really things that you wanted to make sure that people kind of understood about him?
Well, I have a great love for the man, and I think one of the things that that this film does is it shows the close relationship with he and Nancy. It's a very beautiful portrait of a real love relationship, and I think it's an accurate one, very accurate. So one of the things is a real portrait of friendship and love between these two people, and I think it affected the things that he did. It gave him strength in many different ways.
I loved her support for him. And, when he went down, she said, I need to be there with him. It was such a beautiful thing to see,
You bet. You bet. So Penelope did such a wonderful job. And in the end credits, you see Nancy and you see Ronnie, the originals, and then you see the portraits that Dennis and Penelope made. And you can see they caught the essence. And then the very end of the credits, Nancy just dives for on the coffin. It's so moving. And it really, it's like Penelope was doing it because she caught the essence of that woman. It's really a wonderful portrait.
One thing that I liked that this movie showed is that he brought, he was okay to talk to the other side, right?
Right.
I feel like today's day, this is a good message for today's day because we almost feel like we can't, we're at so much odds that we can't. But there he is, meeting with the other side and talking to them and building this relationship. Can you talk about why
absolutely.
that's, important and why that message is good for right now?
Well, I think that, there were several people involved in this presidency. One was Margaret Thatcher. Another one was John Paul II, the Pope. Really great people at that time. They all knew each other and they talked to each other. And Margaret Thatcher said, this fellow Gorbachev, I met him. I think you can deal with him. I mean, this was a great thing for her to say. And so he followed through on that. And Gorbachev himself was an extraordinary fellow, very interesting man to come forth. And it just shows you that these people that are on this earth together at the same time, there's some divine connection when these clusters of people come together, or at least it seemed to me that way. And things can happen because people are beyond a system or this or that. They just connect. You can say you can talk to him. He's trustworthy guy. He's a decent man. He might have new ideas and stuff like that, right? And one of the great things was when he spoke, and it's in the film, I think, although not in the most elaborate way, but when Reagan met Gorbachev at Reykjavik, he had his suit on, and Gorbachev had a coat, but the first thing that Reagan did was he said, "I'll tell you what's wrong with your country. I'll tell you what's wrong with the communism." He addressed it immediately, right away, and it took Gorbachev back, but Gorbachev was able to listen to him. It was a very, very interesting, dynamic moment, But I think people being able to talk directly and strongly, are absolutely necessary in the world's in going toward peace.
And we've supported what you've done, John. And, is there anything to wrap it up? Anything you'd like to say to the Movie Guide audience? We've supported.
Movie Guide audience. The Movie Guide is a nice, that's a nice group of people. I've stayed in touch with Movie Guide over the years with different folks, but Movie Guide, it's like the old fashioned. It's the real love of movies is in Movie Guide. They really do love movies, and they will direct you to the good ones, I think. So pay attention to Movie Guide.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
If you enjoy videos that follow your values like ours and you want to help us continue, go to movieguide.org/donate, because we're actually a nonprofit. You may not know that, but we're working in Hollywood every day to help families have more choices that follows their values. And also subscribe right now.